Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 210 on a Monday night, March the 6th. We are powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors. Family owned and operated for more than 2 decades, Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue out in Bear Hill, or give them a call at 615-356-0303, or log on to alacofinewoodfloors.com. Gentlemen, Will Byrum, Trevor Hulan, all present here tonight. I continue to be more and more speechless. Like I'm losing brain cells as this run continues for Vanderbilt. But we've got so much to get to. We're going to touch a little bit on the Vandy boys, not too much. This is a big basketball pod, but we'll get to Coach Stackhouse winning. This is even crazy to talk about. Co-coach of the year, Liam Robbins. That not surprising here. Defensive.
You were on that last podcast, Billy. You were on
You
that.
were,
like
yes.
me and Trevor were kind of like, yeah,
I wrote it
with
off.
you, but you were, we wrote you off. But you were right. I want you to take credit for that.
But it's still funny that it happened though. Like that's the thing. Like Jerry Stackhouse is co-coach of the year, and I mean credit to him, man. Congratulations.
Yeah,
he earned it.
Yep.
He deserved it. The fact that we're saying that is crazy, but it's awesome, and credit to this team and Stackhouse. They found a way to get there and get to the point of the bubble. Next four out, even though Lenardi has kicked him out after not playing. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Vandy beats Mississippi State Saturday night, 77-72. We will recap that. We'll get to some fan comments and questions, and we'll look into the SEC tournament, Vanderbilt's matchups, either Georgia or LSU on Thursday night, and then a potential Kentucky matchup, knock on wood, if there's wood around you guys. But guys, Will, I'll start with you. I got to ask, Trevor and I had a great time in Memorial Saturday night. I hope you had fun at the birthday party. Were you able to watch most of that game?
Yeah, I got back about 2 minutes left in the first half. I listened to the radio broadcast for the first time in a very long time on the drive back to my house. But we didn't even give predictions for that Mississippi State game because anytime we gave predictions, we were wrong. And I think that was perfect. Going into that game, because everything about that game just felt kind of weird. Vanderbilt got dominated on the glass, but it kind of felt like they were in control for a majority of the game, even though they were dominated on the glass. And they finally, Stute got going. It felt like that offense. Jordan Wright was hot again, and Lawrence was hot again. We talked about these guys being due. Myles Sute was due. I mean, he may be due for another game in the tournament as well.
He was awesome.
Yeah, Jordan Wright was awesome. It was awesome to see Jordan Wright close out his Vanderbilt career with two performances like that in the regular season. That was a guy that we've been waiting on that, and it finally felt like he was in the rhythm of the game. He was just playing. It didn't feel like he was having to force things. You weren't seeing those slips and turnovers. So hopefully he can carry that over into the SEC tournament. But unfortunately, I was not inside of Memorial, Billy and Trevor. So you guys have got to give me a little insight as to what it was inside. Inside a Memorial.
Tell them about it, Trev.
I finally had the pleasure, and Will, we need to get you either in a basketball game or a football game or something. Football, maybe even like one of Vanderbilt's like club rugby games. And all three of us watch a ball game together. But I had the opportunity to watch with Billy and his brother Scott. I actually was 2 rows behind them, but some old guy took my spot. So I thought, well, I'll take someone else's spot and sit by Billy and Scott. But the vibes in Memorial were it was mind-boggling. It was
2L was
Memorial had the juice. It was we talked about this in the spaces afterwards, but the student section, oh my God.
They were there 40 minutes before the game, like half capacity.
Credit, literally, I have done it. It literally everybody who's ever been a fan of Vanderbilt has crapped on the student showing in some form or fashion. They showed up, and they showed up big, and they were loud, and it was absolutely awesome. They definitely made an impact. Billy's right. They were there early, and like the student section was packed like 45, 30 minutes before the game. Like I'd never seen the student section like that in all my life of attending Vanderbilt basketball games. It was awesome. The vibes of Memorial were crazy. Vanderbilt got a big win without Liam Robbins, a big win
Again.
to where the guys who you needed to step up did. So great all around team win. Obviously, you don't want to be dominated on the board as much as Vanderbilt was. That is obviously problematic. But yeah, you had a lot of unsung heroes too. Like shout out to Emmanuel Ansong. We were talking the whole game. Like he had a really good sort of like grinded out game. I thought he was awesome. He's sort of obviously Jordan and Myles and all those guys had great games, but man, when Emmanuel Ansong was on the court, his defense was superb. He really made a difference.
He's an SEC level athlete. Like if you just look at his athleticism, like that dunk early in the game, that got the students up and the crowd into it. Like he made plays that really mattered in that game. Like he got a couple big rebounds. That dunk I thought was huge. And we've talked about athletes all the time. He's probably the best athlete, like athleticism wise, like jumping out of the gym type of guy for Vanderbilt. But the fact that they have won without too many guys like that, I mean, Mississippi State, they had like 8 other Emmanuel Ansongs on the floor. Like they had some freak athletes. Matthews was a guard. He's like 6'6", 230 pounds. Like the dude's massive. So I just thought Ansong played well. There were so many guys that made big shots at big moments. Trey Thomas's 3 in the right wing was huge. Well, they just hit big shots that you know, every time there was a shot, Colin Smith's at the top of the key where, okay, you got to hit this to extend. And they did. They kept hitting those shots. So we'll dive all into it, guys. We'll get to your comments and questions. We'll get to an SEC tournament preview, and we will talk about the net rankings and continue to harp on how ridiculous those are. We've slept on Ken Pomeroy. I haven't looked at where Vanderbilt is in Ken Pomeroy right now, but the net is what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same.
RPI, RIP to the RPI, because if the RPI mattered, Vandy is a lock right now. And RIP to RPI because it doesn't matter anymore. But we'll get to all that. Before we do, though, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @Dore_report and Instagram, Dore.report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the breaking news. All right, guys, we'll start with the Vandy boys real quick here. I know this isn't the talking point, but they are in season, so I feel like we got to throw them in here. Had a good weekend. 1, 2 out of 3 in Minneapolis, 8-4 on the season. They stay at number 7 in D1 baseball's top 25. Lost to Nebraska 5-3 on Friday. And of course, you saw a lot of freaking out from Vandy fans, but they ended up winning Saturday and Sunday, beat Maryland 8-7 with an RJ Schreck walk-off on Saturday, and then beat Minnesota yesterday 4-0. Just a quiet no-hitter, combined no-hitter by the Vandy boys. Grayson Carter, Sam Leboki, Ryan Ginther, and Nick Maldonado all combined for it. A pretty badass picture of Alan Espinal with the 4 other pitchers that combined for that. I thought that was cool. Vastine, Austin, Schreck, Nolan, they're all mashing the baseball. But Trevor, I know your recap article is going to be up here soon. Bradfield and Diaz still need to step up. You know, I think they're both hitting in the low 200s right now. So I know we got to get on to basketball, but, you know, real quick, sort of tease that recap, Trev. I think the offense is better, but there's still room to grow, and there's so much baseball to play. It's weird. Yeah. It's weird criticizing the team right now, but their offense, I think, needs to step up a little bit, especially Bradfield and Diaz, guys like that. You know, so to where Vanderbilt gets to the point to where they win SEC series.
Yeah, I think it's funny too. It's so funny for football. The expectations have been so low, and I'll say this because I don't think we think about baseball in this aspect a lot. The expectations for football have been so low for so long. Basketball, they're starting to rise, and you're starting to raise expectations a little bit. But we can be hypercritical about this baseball team. And like, it's not just, we don't just want them to like win a couple series. Like the standard for Vanderbilt baseball is to host and then to make it to Omaha. And if you don't host and you don't go to Omaha, then that season is a failure. And so anytime I watch Vandy baseball, I am eternally grateful for Tim Corbin and this program. But yeah, the Bats are, I don't know if they're waking up. They're still, I actually tweeted at Ari Gerson, who does a really, really good job with baseball coverage. And I straight up asked, I told people not to freak out, but I was kind of freaking out after that one game this weekend. And I was like, is it time to worry about how like quiet the Bats are? And she said that just the way this roster is constructed, as much as you sort of hate to see it, Vanderbilt is going to win a lot of 3-2, 3-1, 2-0 ball games. This team is built on pitching, not a lot of offense. I think you're going to see, and we've seen it early in that initial series at Globe Life, where Vanderbilt played a lot of small ball. I feel like Enrique Bradfield freaking bunted on every AB. Which if there's guys on, or if they're like, I don't want to get into the whole bunting situation. I have my own opinion on that. But yeah, I think Vanderbilt's going to have to sort of play that old school Vanderbilt baseball that we kind of saw growing up, to where they're going to have to play small ball and be really, really aggressive on the base paths, which they can be. They can win ball games like that. That's just a fact. But pitching is great. A combined no-no. All lefties too, which is sort of unheard of.
I love how that was so quiet. Like, oh yeah, Vandy just threw a no-no.
Well, and two, like that's just the thing, to where Vandy has produced such stud pitchers for over a decade now, that doing something like throwing a combined no-no is just like, it's just kind of what they do. Yeah. Like, so yeah, I'm not worried about baseball yet. Enrique Bradfield does need to get on base a little bit more. I don't care if it's hits. I don't care if it's walks. Just boost that on base percentage, because he's most effective when he's on the base paths. I don't care how he gets on. I don't think Tim Corbin cares how he gets on, as long as he gets on the bases. Yeah. But yeah, baseball, big. I mean, not a big series win, but I mean, still a 2-0 or 2-1 series win over the weekend is still great. They stayed. I just lost my camera. Okay, I'm back. It just went blank. I was like, where'd I go? Yeah, they're going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. The pitching is stellar. They still have Tim Corbin. I'm sure the Bats will wake up eventually. But enjoy watching. I'll say this: enjoy watching guys like RJ Austin.
Yes.
He's a stud, and I really like watching him play baseball. Also, the field in Minnesota was disgusting. I don't know if anybody actually watched it. It was terrible.
Did you see some of the camera angles too? Like there would be a Nolan hit a home run to center field, and the camera went to like third base and then right field, and like never found the ball. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how is it this?
I always reserve most of my comments for baseball until after basketball season finishes out, and I can shift my focus over. But I watched some of that series.
That's part of the reason why.
It was giving me like horrific anxiety watching them play on that field. I don't know what it was. It just looked like it looked like they went 50% of the way to transforming it into a baseball field. And then we're
thinking football. Yeah.
Yeah. This ain't them. They were like, this is not for them. I'll be right. And they were like, no. And they're like, this is fine. Then like, let's just go ahead and play it like this. That's what it felt like to me. And I was like, I can't watch this. Like, I just can't.
It's funny. SEC fans, like Ole Miss and Vandy fans, were like, what in the world is this? Like, what are we watching? But
it was, just from an aesthetic standpoint, that was, I mean, I don't know if you guys like watched
from a Vanderbilt fan base that's used to playing on turf, like an infield, turf. Infield. That was not our complaint.
The turf looked awful. Like, it's like, let's make this turf look bad, like for these baseball guys. Like, it was ridiculous. But
I thought that they were playing a game in a batting cage. Like, I don't know if you guys ever went to like one of those old school,
like the bad turf.
Dude, that's literally what I thought. I'm like, are they playing in a freaking batting cage? Like, what in the world?
Pulled out the AstroTurf.
Literally.
Anyway, Vandy gets it done, and don't want to harp on the Vandy boys too much. But I thought Saturday's win was huge, just to to bounce back after Friday's loss. Well, they've got your Golden Eagles this week. Tennessee Tech comes to the Hawk on tomorrow, Tuesday. So, and then they got Evansville on Wednesday, and then they got Loyola Marymount this weekend. So that's what's going on with the Vandy
Doves
boys.
almost pulled an upset on them last. I'm glad they didn't, but
it's Will's turn now.
Yeah. Will, welcome to the torture chair now.
Tennessee Tech baseball not too long ago made a nice little run there and had Texas on the had Texas on the ropes in the supers. Ooh. And they started flashing the hook 'em down and they got beat. But,
oh God!
They started out up 1-0 in that super.
Speaking of Tennessee Tech, their basketball team came so close to making an NCAA tournament berth. So
for the first time, it would have been the first time for the Golden Eagles since 1963 to make it to the NCAA tournament. The second longest drought of any team that has made it. Now that's a caveat of a team that has made it to the NCAA tournament. It's the second longest drought in all of NCAA Division I basketball.
Yeah, that was a Vandy. That was a Vandy type loss.
They hit a buzzer beater. They hit a buzzer beater to win the game, and they called it a 3 on the court. They were down 2. They threw the ball full court length. Dude caught it, turned around, shot it, hit it. Thought it was a 3. It got called 2, sent to overtime, and they lost to add to the heartbreak. So they celebrated the win, only to have the win pulled back, come out, play, and lose. So
all I could think
that was fun to watch.
All I could think about was you, Will, experiencing the Vandy side of that, and Tennessee Tech. But let's get to basketball. Before we dive deep into the game, guys, and where Vanderbilt is right now, let's talk about Stackhouse, Robbins, Jordan Wright, because we need to harp on these guys and their awards and what they racked in. Stackhouse, co-SEC Coach of the Year, Vandy's first Coach of the Year since 2010. This is the 11th time. I didn't know this. 11th time a Vandy coach has won SEC Coach of the Year. Wow. Roy Skinner won 4 times. Wayne Dobbs won it. CM Newton won it twice. Eddie Fogler won it 1 year, and Kevin Stallings won it twice. So I didn't know that. That's pretty crazy. Tells you about the tradition and coaching excellence that's come through Vandy. Liam Robbins, first ever SEC Defensive Player of the Year winner for Vanderbilt, led Vandy in points, rebounds, and blocks. I mean, guys, he deserved it. That's the award that you go, okay, I'm not surprised at all that Robbins was able to take it home. Jordan Wright, SEC Player of the Week, averaged 21 points, 5 rebounds against Kentucky and Mississippi State. Guys, all of those were deserved. I mean, you look back at that, Jordan Wright, he deserves Player of the Week. Robbins deserves Defensive Player of the Year. And Stackhouse deserved Coach of the Year. Now, I thought it was good, co-coach of the year. I thought it was going to be Dennis Gates along with him. That's why I tweeted. I tweeted along with Missouri's Dennis Gates because that's what I thought. But it was actually Buzz Williams at Texas A&M. So congrats to Buzz and Stackhouse. But, well, I'll start with you here. I'm not surprised Stackhouse was co-coach of the year. But part of me is still stunned going back to the season, the part of the season of the Alabama game, and thinking to myself, is this ever possible? I had already started writing down a list of candidates to replace Coach Stackhouse on pen.
I mean, we had an entire pod. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we were going, but it is unbelievable what he's done with this team. And Will, you just look at the guys play for him. Like they play for him. They emulate him. And it reminds me of like when Jordan starts getting buckets and Tyrin plays the way he can. It reminds me of Stackhouse, the way I'm not saying I watch Stackhouse in the NBA, but it makes you think of Stack as a player. And that's how this team is playing. They've got the Stackhouse swagger right now, Will, and he deserved it. He really did. As crazy as it is to say he's Coach of the Year, he did it. He proved all of us wrong.
If you would have said 2 months ago to us that we would be saying the words Jerry Stackhouse is SEC Coach of the Year or co-coach of the year, and then he deserves it, I don't think we would have believed you. And it literally did take winning 8 of the last 9 games the regular season. So it was a pretty big turnaround. It's not like everything was kind of mediocre before that. But I wish you could point to something on this team and say this is the reason for the turnaround, or this is the thing, or X, Y, and Z. But this team just doesn't have that. They don't have the one thing you can point to and say, this is the switch that flipped, or this is the thing that happened. It's just like 1,000 little things started working better than they were before. A lot of it is really Ezra Mignon. I mean, he is the difference. His play, once they've got on this streak, he has been the best point guard in the SEC, and how he has run this offense. And the biggest change has been, even though it's not necessarily directly pointing to the winning streak, is Ezra Mignon's not just ability to get this team in the offense set, it's his ability to attack the basket and be a scoring threat around the basket. And then Jordan Wright and Tyrin Lawrence stepping up, especially Tyrin. You said it last podcast, I think, Billy. He always has the quietest. He'll have like a quiet 21 points. But it feels like almost every night during this win streak is Tyrin Lawrence has just become a different animal.
He's that second guy every game.
Yep. Even though it's not easy to point to anything specific, like just one gigantic change in the rotations or one thing that Stackhouse, did, it's really Tyrin Lawrence. He pushed his buttons perfectly by sitting him during that Alabama game. Now, in the end, that 57-point loss to Alabama, with how it's calculated into the net, may end up being what costs them a tournament berth. So it did get this team playing its best ball down the stretch of the season.
With a cost.
And you've seen, but there was a cost. Exactly. So Tyrin Lawrence, you've seen a different beast come out ever since he didn't play in that game. But Stack, was it worth it? So I think that's where we sit is, yes, it's incredible what Jerry Stackhouse has done turning around this team halfway through the season. And when you look at the trajectory from when he started here, it's great. But there are still things when you've been plugged into this team throughout the entire year, that there were coaching decisions now that we're just kind of looking at as part of this team, that were coaching decisions that are now costing them and are big issues. And he didn't figure out this team early. Like, the rotations were awful and this team wasn't playing well together early, but he was able to get them to congeal together and start playing their best ball. So that's where I think me and Trevor probably were, is Jerry Stackhouse 100% is the SEC coach of the year during the last half of SEC play, maybe the last 60% of SEC play. But prior to that, this season was definitely not on the trajectory of being deemed a success. Probably wasn't even on the trajectory of Jerry Stackhouse being a favorite to keep his job going into next season. So I think that's where we're a little torn. It's like, congratulations, Jerry. It's been incredible. But it's not like this whole season has just been a fantastic joyride of success. So that's where it feels a little weird, is most of the time when you see SEC Coach of the Year, it's a huge jump in success, definite NCAA tournament berth. That's not really the position
that's why I thought
program
Missouri
is in. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a weird situation to have a team that had expectations to be on the bubble. Now they're sitting pretty much at or a slightly lower than where their preseason expectations were. And the coach is still winning co-coach of the year. Like, I get it. I get it. It is awesome. But this is maybe where we expected, probably, if this season went as a C, we would be sitting about 80th in the net rankings on the outside looking into the bubble. So that's where I think it's a little weird. I mean, I agree with it. You were dead on last podcast, Billy. Trevor, I don't know your opinion on it, but it is just odd to be sitting here. I'm not satisfied with this season. Like, I'm not fully disappointed. Like, it's not a miserable failure, but I'm kind of somewhere in the middle right now. And I think most Vanderbilt fans sit there that where was this performance? Where were these performances 10 games ago? And where was this performance when you lost to LSU midweek? And there are just times that it just kind of blows your mind how this team can come out and perform, and then come out and dominate Mississippi State without your 7'1" star center in the game. So
you never know.
I don't know. It's a lot of confusion. Trevor, I have a feeling that are you in support of the Jerry Stackhouse co-coach of the year, or are you on the other side?
Was it worth it?
I as much as I would love to have an answer to that right now, I don't know if I do. Like, so honestly, as a fan, I really want to enjoy him being co-coach of the year. I think this last stretch of the season, I think he totally deserves it. as bad as that Alabama loss was, and I totally agree, that might be what stops us from getting a tournament berth.
Yeah.
The more I think about it is, do you have this turnaround if you don't get bludgeoned by Alabama though?
That's
So
the question.
True.
that's why I'm having like my brain is literally in a tizzy because I'm gonna be honest. I don't think they do have this turnaround if they don't get their brains beat out by Bama. I really don't.
It probably gets worse. Like if they lose to Bama by
I
20 or
think you're
30,
right.
like
Yeah.
it probably just continues. But you do have to give credit to Stack on that,
Yeah.
saying, okay,
Yep.
he was able to rally the guys and get them behind something when it felt like every Vandy fan was against this team and this program. And
That's exactly where I'm at. Yeah.
and you know, Will, I'm with you. Like it's hard to pinpoint something with the players. And so my gut and my brain keeps going back to Coach Stack. Like it keeps going back to like his ability to rally these guys. And my tune has changed, guys. I mean, I'm sure you can tell, like I'm not, I'm not all the way back. And I think most fans aren't yet. But to get to this point, like beating Kentucky at Rupp, like we never thought that was possible. Beating Tennessee at home, even to start the rally early, beating Auburn, going to Gainesville, beating Florida, then beating Florida again. Like they figured something out. I don't know what they figured out, but they figured something out. And so, Will, I'm with you with like the players. Like I don't, it's hard to pinpoint like one guy or like a few guys that have really rallied because it's been a mix. But I just keep going back. Like that little angel on my shoulder says it's Coach Stackhouse. And so that's where I'm at. Like I just sort of keep going back to Stack, even though I was a little surprised still to see him win it. Like I woke up or I don't know when it was announced, but I looked at my phone and I'm like, oh wow, they gave it to him. Like I was still like, part of me was still surprised.
Mm-hmm.
It also could be viewed a little bit as like an award that is almost being given for what he's done like the last 3 years of trajectory. Right. And it's like it's often hard to find within conference such a clear and obvious trajectory of higher winning percentage.
This was a tough year.
Within the conference. So I don't know. I don't know how much more I have to say about this because I don't want to sound like I'm trying to like diminish him receiving the award. It's not that I don't think he deserves it, but it's like I also am not fully on the side of like, 100% he absolutely deserved it. So it's kind of this weird middle ground, kind of like where I'm sitting with Stackhouse in general.
It's still hard to wrap your brain around it all, the run, what Coach Stack has done. So we'll kind of continue to get to Stack and what he's done throughout the season. But guys, Vandy knocks off Mississippi State 77-72. They're now 18-13 on the season, 11-7 in the SEC. They've won 8 of their last 9. They ended the season on a 5-game home winning streak. For the Bulldogs, their at-large bid takes a massive hit. I mean, you could argue they're done. Now, I think they could still go on a run, make some noise at Bridgestone, and maybe get in. But Vanderbilt, I keep thinking about that, guys. Like Mississippi State came into this game having to win. Like this was a must-win for Mississippi State, and Vandy just said, "Nope, you're coming into our house. You're not beating us." So I thought that mindset was there the whole night. They never trailed, Will, as you talked about, 4 players in double figures. And I love Ezra's quote after the game. Chad Bishop put this up on video. He said, "I think we have a tough, gritty team and we love each other. We really do. And the coaches love us and we love the coaches. It's just a team. It's a real team. And I think that comes down to a lot of things and we get it done because of that." And I thought he put that well because at the end of a lot of these games, guys, and even the Mississippi State game is sitting up there with you, Trev. I said, something's going to happen to where Vandy doesn't get it done. Like Mississippi State's going to.
Oh, we were having bad feelings at the end. Like we were talking, we're like, they're going to lose.
Yeah. Like Mississippi State's going to find a way, right? Like they have to win. This is a must win for them. But no, Vandy found a way like they have the last 5 home games and 8 of the last 9 games. And I think you think about the fibers of this team and how they're made up. And the guy and Ezra talked about, these guys were underrated coming out of high school. There's not a 5 or even a 4-star recruit on this team. I mean, maybe if you go back and look at the rankings, there's a 1 or 2, but I don't even think so. Like, I don't even know if Liam was a 4-star coming out of high school. So like, they're all Colin Smith. Yeah. So, and Shelby, but he didn't play. But, you know, my point is that these guys have really made it their own, and they've turned their games. Most guys have turned their games into a dominant form against really good teams. And guys, it's unbelievable how far this team has come. They were picked to finish 12th in the SEC. They finished tied for 4th, 9 wins over quad 1 and quad 2 teams in the net. That should get you in. I mean, looking at the numbers, if your record against quad 1 and quad 2 teams gets you in, you should be in. They beat Kentucky and Mississippi State without Liam Robbins. So, guys, I keep pointing at that. This team is more than just Liam. I think that's what we're figuring out a little bit here. Like, Liam was out against Kentucky, you know, within 4 minutes of the game getting underway. You beat Kentucky on the road. You beat Mississippi State without Liam. Like, they find a way, whether it's QMB fighting with Tolu Smith, even though he ended up with 27 points and 11 rebounds. Like, they find a way. And Will, these guards, Jordan Wright, Tyrin Lawrence, Ezra Manjon, and Myles Sute, if they play like that, this is a tough team to beat. Like, you got Jordan dropping 19, Lawrence with 16, Ezra with 15, Myles with 12. I mean, that's your dream game for those guards. So I think you're looking at these guards, well, they've played a lot of basketball. And what do we talk about in March? Everybody talks about your guard play. Okay, are your guards good enough? Can they make shots? Can they get in the lane? They've got a guy like Ezra to get in the lane and kick it out to Stute. They've got Tyrin, who's getting to the rack consistently. And you've got the Swiss Army knife and Jordan Wright, who can do whatever you need. So, Will, I put those 4 guards against anybody in the country right now. When they're playing well.
Yes, it's all well, I'm not going to disagree with you. It's always just hard to view this and get as excited. And I'm just going to get this out of the way now, knowing the potential this team could have, like, because you saw it with a fully healthy Liam Robbins of how good this team is. And now him being out the remainder of the season. So I just have to push that out of my mind. This is the team now. And it's different. Vibes. It's a different look. I mean, you're basically kind of working with the fact that you have, outside of QMB, a bunch of guys that are positionless players. You have Ezra Manjon, that's clearly a point guard, and QMB is clearly a 5. Other than that, pretty much anybody can swap out anywhere. And that can create matchup nightmares for defenses. So as much of a matchup nightmare as it is for Vanderbilt when Myles Sute is playing the 5, when Vanderbilt's on offense, Stackhouse has done a good job of designing that offense where now it's a matchup nightmare just as much on the other side for the opponent. So there's 2 sides to that always. Anytime that I see that, I'm like, well, maybe if you drew up some better offense, it would be a mismatch for the opponent as well. Stackhouse seems to be doing a good job of that. But, man, it's still hard to get out of your mind, like, the depth issue that they have. But now having Lee Dort coming back, depending on how healthy he can be in this tournament, that can be the difference. Those 9 to 12 minutes that Lee Dort could provide of a true 5-man just with the big body could be a massive difference in this SEC tournament. We'll see. I mean, especially if it's a matchup with Kentucky kind of looming on the radar. I don't want to look ahead, but having Lee Dort back for that game would be very helpful. But Billy, you said it, the guard play. The guard play has been what has been the difference. Ezra Manjon, Tyrin Lawrence, I talked about it in the turnaround a little bit, but Jordan Wright, if Jordan Wright can continue to play and score like this, I'll put this team up against anybody in a tournament setting, because if you add in him shooting 30-foot shots from the outside, this team almost becomes unguardable. And then it was nice to see Myles Sute shoot 4 out of 8 as well.
That was the Jordan Wright we've been waiting for, Trev. That was right there. That was it.
And we've been saying it. I mean, I specifically have been saying it, and I've been really critical of Jordan Wright. I've been saying is he that guy that we thought he could be? And Saturday, he was that guy that going into the season we thought he was going to be. He completely put the team on his back. He had an absolutely great game offensively, defensively. I mean, he was the star of the show. And if Jordan Wright doesn't put up that type of performance, then Vanderbilt doesn't win that ball game.
Mm-mm.
And we're not the tune tonight would be greatly different than it is now. But Jordan Wright, I mean, what a performance! I mean, SEC Player of the Week.
Mm-hmm.
He deserves it, man. He was awesome. And then Will has been emphasizing it too with Myles Sute. Shooters get cold, but whenever they get hot, I mean, you can't stop them. And he finally had that game to where, and I think even with Stute, I think Saturday, I don't even think he was fully on. You know what I mean? Like I was like, he was sort of teetering between like hot and cold. He was kind of lukewarm. But my God, if going into tournament time, if he can get like on like he was early in the season, I don't know if you can beat this team just because of the length and the space that they would have on the perimeter. I don't know how you guard them.
That when the guards are playing,
you're going to run a zone. They're going to shoot.
Well, there was a
comment
all
day long.
There was a comment from one of the announcers, and he made it a couple times, but you guys were at the game, so you obviously didn't hear this. But he said something. This is a very good scoring or shooting lineup on the court for Vanderbilt, and it was often with Magnon or QMB at the 5 and Magnon at the 1. But then the other 3 guys around them were all either having to be guarded by the defense as shooters because they were shooting well that game, or it was like Tyrin Lawrence and Myles Sute out there, and it was spreading out everything. Yeah. The lineup usage and just Stack has just figured something out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've taken quite a few shots at Stack, but like the biggest one I took was this narrative of him being an X's and O's coach. Well, he took that personally because this is the best coaching X's and O's wise of getting guys open and just consistently getting good looks for the guys on the court in this last 10 games. It's been incredible. And it was just as good against Mississippi State with weird lineups, which kind of changes up everything.
And you think about like Liam Robbins is out, but I think guys, and I think y'all agree, if Ezra Magnon was out, that would be a whole nother story. Like imagine this team without Ezra, like having to go with Trey Thomas at the 1 consistently, or even Paul Lewis. Like this team would just be totally different. And that's the case for most teams. Like Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler, they're a totally different team because they can't get into a lot of sets because he can't dribble drive. So I think for Ezra has been such a catalyst, guys. Like Ezra getting into the paint is so dangerous because he gets in the paint, he gets by his defender most times. Now, maybe not all the way to the basket, but he makes great reads. Like when he's going to the basket, if his guy's behind him, he's taking it to the rack. But if he's a little bit to the side of him and he knows he doesn't have a shot, he's kicking it out to Myles. You saw that, guys. The perfect example was Myles' deep 3 from about 40 feet out on Honky Tonk Night. He shot it he made it from Broadway. That was Ezra, guys. My
guy was at FGL house just banging shots.
That was Ezra's ability to cross over, get into the paint, kick it out, and Myles, he wasn't even wide open. I mean, the shot was from 45 feet out. But, Will, I keep thinking of Ezra, man, and I think that's what Stack has figured out. He's figured out how to use Ezra, and he's put him in those situations to where Vanderbilt is almost scoring every time or having a chance to score.
Ezra does this thing that is kind of like, I hope I can describe this well. So he is very quick and fast, but there are a lot of guys that are quick and fast and whatever that play point guard. It's when opponents bring full court pressure of any kind. When Ezra Magnon is on the court, he just makes one little in and out dribble and zip, he's up the sideline.
That was huge.
The pressure.
That
you might as well just forget trying to press Vanderbilt when Ezra Magnon is getting the ball because you can't catch him to double him. He's so fast. And that is like a different level of speed and quickness from a point guard that even the quick and fast guys don't have that gear. And Ezra Magnon just looks like he's not even trying. It's like he's gliding down the court.
And I'll say too, Will, a little bit about like the X's and O's thing too, specifically with Ezra. I don't know if you can. I haven't been able to notice it on TV as well as I have as to when I've been at the Auburn game and at the Mississippi State game. If you're sitting behind the baskets and in the second half, specifically where we're sitting in L, and Vandy is coming towards you, Me and Billy were talking about this Saturday night. You can drive a Mack truck down the paint. The way that the
The
defense
way
is
they spread
spread
out. Yeah.
out, specifically when Ezra's on the court, it's insane. Like you literally look like you could drive a semi to the paint.
And
But I
yeah,
totally agree. Yeah, Ezra, and Mississippi State pressed a couple times on Saturday night, and Ezra's ball handling is too good. He's got that real good twitch. Whenever he's on the court, this Vanderbilt offense is much, much different. Yeah.
without Ezra Saturday night, Vandy does not win that game because
No.
Mississippi State, you said a couple times, Trevor, it's almost like they pressed the whole second half. Now, it wasn't a full court press. It was that 3/4 court trap where
sort of
they're
annoy the
trying
hell out of you press.
Yeah, they're trying to force turnovers, but they never really got turnovers. Trey turned it over once. I think Q turned it over once. But other than that, I thought Ezra was the guy. Stack said, hey, Ezra, just get it up the floor and get us in our set. They're going to back out. And they did. And guys, one more thing on the guards. I think we can't take for granted the quickness of Ezra and Tyrin and the explosiveness of those guys. Like, not every team, there's some really good basketball teams this year, but there's some teams like a Tennessee, for example, they don't really have any guards that can penetrate inside and just be explosive and get to the rack. Vandy does. They've got a guy like Ezra and Tyrin and even Jordan, who any time, if there's space, they can drive. So it's not just Ezra. You've got a guy like Tyrin, talk about making it look easy. Tyrin makes getting to the rim look like a walk in the park on a Saturday.
Hey, put a little respect on Trey Thomas's little floater. He's got to.
Don't sleep. Don't sleep. The floater that's been open. Like he's been open, and I think he missed a couple times against Kentucky and Mississippi State, but that's another shot. If you got Trey coming off that curl and hitting the floater, that's another shot that Vandy needs. So I just think, guys, I think the guards have been the story throughout this pod. I'm realizing, something to pinpoint, and it's been the guards and their ability to get the ball into the paint. Will, some team stats here. Vandy shot 49% from the field. It's pretty damn good. 48% from three. You shoot 48% from three, you're going to win a lot of games, especially when you're at Memorial. 13 of 18 from the free throw line. Their misses were almost costly, but they made a good percent of them, over 70%. Those misses, guys, Ezra's missed, Tyrin missed a couple late. I thought those might cost them. I thought those might cost him, but Jordan's were huge. He was 4 for 4.
Trey Thomas had a big miss.
Yeah, Jordan was 4 for 4 in the final seconds. And then, you looked at Stute. I thought, 12 points, all threes, finished 4 of 8 from deep. I agree with you, Trevor. He wasn't all the way on. Like, we've seen Stute hit 6, 7, 8 threes in a game. Like that wasn't even his best performance. But guys, let's talk about the rebounding. Mississippi State dominated. They dominated the paint. They out-rebounded Vandy 45-24. Vandy gave up 23 offensive rebounds. Looking ahead to that Friday night Kentucky matchup, knock on wood, rebounding will be crucial against Sheboygan. Tolu Smith had 27 points and 11 rebounds. Guys, I thought that's the reason I thought Vandy might lose the game down the stretch. Like Tolu Smith, every time he touched the ball, it was either a foul or he would find a way to finish. So I just thought rebounding and guys, to lose the rebounding battle 45-24, but find a way to win. And you mentioned this in the spaces, Trev, like that's something otherworldly. Like that almost rarely ever happens.
That defies basketball logic.
Yeah. But you look at Vandy's shooting, okay, 48% from three. That's what did them. That's what did it for them. And the free throw line shots were huge. Mississippi State. Go ahead,
I'll say this too. This just a little quick tidbit. Not only did Vandy not lose, with that big of a discrepancy on the boards, Vandy never trailed.
That's what was crazy.
They didn't trail the whole ball game. That, like, not just winning, but leading the whole ball game with that big of a discrepancy is freaking insane. Like, I don't know if that's ever. I'm sure it's happened before, but
yeah. And I think that's why, Will, you kept saying it felt like they did control the game. Like, even when late it didn't, and then Mississippi State went on a run there, I think, midway through that second half, I kept telling myself, this is it. This is where Mississippi State sort of takes over. They just kept hitting shots. Vandy found a way to just keep hitting shots. And it's like hard to pinpoint, but Stute had a big three. Tyrin had a big three late. Trey had a big three late. It's like the shots they had to make, they made. And that feels like a common theme down the stretch here where they're just making shots when they've got to make them. And that's what it comes down to in March, guys. So Vandy gets it done against Mississippi State. I know we've got some fan comments and questions here. And we've got a several good group of questions here. Let's get to Vandy Dude on Twitter. He asks, how will the Dores make the tournament? Will it take 1, take 2, or even 3 wins in the SEC tournament? This is the question here. This is the end all be all here. And it's almost impossible to answer. Like, I think, and Trevor, you said this before we went on, that you think Vandy just has to win 1 and they've got a shot.
I think it's a real possibility that they just have to win 1.
Part of me believes you when you say that because the bubble is not great. And there's bubble teams.
Beat Kentucky, you're in regardless. It's no doubt, take it to the bank. Beat Kentucky, you're in.
But there's also the other side of it saying, even if Vanderbilt does beat Kentucky, does that Alabama win come back to haunt them?
Oh,
like,
God.
that's the conundrum that the committee has right now. And I will stand by this saying, no matter what happens in the SEC tournament, if Vandy wins 1, that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough sell. But if Vandy wins 2 or even 3, I think it's still going to be up to the committee, a few members on that committee, basically turning on their human side of their brain, not the computer side, saying, look at the way this team is playing. They deserve a bid. Like, I think you have to have that if you're Vandy, because if not, you're leaving it up to the other 7, I don't know how many guys are on the committee, the other 7 computer geeks basically saying, no, this team is 80 in the net. They're not getting in. So I just think you need some human interaction there in the committee if you're Vandy.
I mean, Vanderbilt's going to be a good test case this year because right now I think it does a lot depend on what happens in the SEC tournament, whether Vanderbilt is truly considered a bubble team. And I'm not saying right now that Vanderbilt, if everything just stopped and they selected the committee or selected the field, that Vanderbilt should be in the tournament. I'm not saying that. However, I'm saying that there are some things that have come up this year in the net rankings that have almost made them irrelevant to me. And if the committee can't recognize the flaw that is within these systems, and I'll just bring up, there are a lot of teams I could bring up. Okay. But I think the worst one to me, and if anybody out there finds out I'm wrong, please correct me, but I know I'm not, is Ohio State is ranked 20 spots above Vanderbilt in the NCAA basketball net rankings. Ohio State is 13-18 and have lost 12 of their last 15 basketball games. They're ranked 63rd in the NCAA net.
I don't even know what to say.
Either I'm looking at wrong data on the NCAA's website, or something doesn't make sense. Right now, I'm looking at it on NCAA.
No, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and this is correct. That is how messed up the NCAA net rankings are. I had this whole list of things that I was going to go through showing teams that had 0 wins versus quad 1 teams ranked above Vanderbilt and 1 win versus quad 1 teams. But that's just in your face a symptom of the problem. Is 13-18 Ohio State is ranked 63rd in the NCAA net. There's also an interesting stat here because I went through the numbers of teams that have played at least 10 games versus Q1 opponents, okay, and have won. I'm looking at this compared to Vanderbilt. So right now, they're of teams that have played 10 or less, I'm going to mess this up, Billy. So give me a pause here for a second. Okay, reset. Okay. Of teams ranked ahead of Vanderbilt that have played 10 or more Q1 games, Vanderbilt has a higher win percentage than those teams. So if you run through it, Florida ranked at 59 has a 14% Q1 win percentage. Ohio State 63rd, 14% Q1 win percentage. Illinois ranked 33rd, 17% Q1 win percentage. Utah ranked 76th, 18%. Washington State ranked 70th, or 9%. Oregon ranked 47th, ranked 20% win percentage. The point I'm getting to is I know that there are a lot of things that go into the NCAA net rankings. There are a lot of analytics. There's a lot of win margin. And was it on the road? It's not as simple as looking at wins and losses. We all know that. It's not that easy. But this is not the way. And it's getting worse. The RPI is not the way either, but this is worse than the RPI. This makes less sense than the RPI, which was a fatally flawed rating metric. And I'm just going to keep using Ohio State as the example because it's inarguable. There's no way to make an argument watching that Ohio State team, looking at what they have done the last 15 games. And if you just turn on the television and watch them play basketball, you tell me that team is a top 68 team in the country in college basketball. Wrong. They are not 20 spots better than Vanderbilt. It's a flawed metric. This whole thing of equally distributed weight from beginning to end of the season on every single game, that sounds awesome in theory. That sounds fair in theory, but it's not. Because teams are not playing their best basketball at the beginning of the year, and you're penalizing teams that are going through the traditional process of having a broad rotation and tightening it down as you inch closer to tournament time. And you're penalizing teams for playing their best basketball at the end of the year versus playing it in the middle of the year and then pissing their pants down the stretch and losing every game. That's not very detrimental to you. So there are a lot of issues. I wish we could present a PowerPoint. It would make all this data a lot easier to present. It's very, very boring to look at. But I'm sure there will be some more questions, and I've got some pretty good Excel data here for specific questions.
Do you guys remember the BCS? Much of that, when there was a bunch
people
of
hated
arguing, everyone was up in arms about the BCS.
Yeah.
The net makes the BCS look like nothing. The net makes the BCS look like it was perfect. And even RPI, a lot of people didn't like RPI at certain times, but the RPI looks like the best metric ever invented compared to the net right now. I mean, this is ridiculous. But back to the question it was a good question. I think too, and I think this is.
I forgot to answer the question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, you're good. But I think too, and I think you'd agree, Will, here, 2 wins in the SEC tournament is the best shot. Now, you'd like to have 3, of course.
The point I was trying to make by going through all that data that I forgot about was I think with 2 wins, obviously, yes, you would look and say a 20-win team with the wins that they have on their resume should be in.
And the strength of schedule.
Exactly. Yeah. But when you look at these net rankings and you look at the history, and you can go to NCAA.org and look at the history and rankings of each team, and you look at what has happened to Vanderbilt recently, it doesn't look like that's going to do enough. And if the NCAA tournament committee chooses the field how they have publicly said they are, which is not just the NCAA net, but that is one of, if not the heaviest factor going in, then I don't know if Vanderbilt can do anything, because they're not going to have a net ranking that's going to be even comparable to these other bubble teams. It's impossible based on what they have done recently with the wins they've gotten. They just haven't bumped up enough. And that's not going to change.
Yeah, and what you said, Will, makes me want to bring up Matthew Fisher-Davis's tweet from earlier today. He's got some really good tweets. I know we've repped some of them, but he said, if we're not in yet, I don't see why us beating Kentucky at a neutral site would take us over the top if beating them in Rupp meant nothing. Looking like it'll take winning the whole thing, which is absurd, but it's what it looks like. Hopefully someone beats Bama up top, LOL. Part of me believes that, but the human side of me really, for the sake of college athletics, hopes that there are 3 to 4 committee members that say, no, ignore the net for this team. This Vanderbilt team is playing phenomenal basketball right now. And I get the net. I get where Vanderbilt's at. That's what's going to happen. Part of me agrees with Matthew Fisher-Davis, and agrees with you, Will, because, and I don't like saying it. That's not what I agree with, but the deep dark side of me thinks that might be the case. Now, I really hope not, for the sake of college athletics, for the betterment of college basketball. I hope the net dies after this year, but scarily that might be the case. Who knows, though? Who knows?
I might have to tweet out this image, and then Trevor, I'm sorry, this will be the last thing I say on numbers.
No, you're fine.
Then, you can give the comment of anger out here, but you can see on the NCAA's website, you can see the largest movements that Vanderbilt has had in the net rankings this year. They started out ranked at number 119 in the first net rankings on December 4th of 2022. On December 8th of 2022, they were ranked number 109. They lost to Grambling State on December 9th, and that moved them to number 137. Ooh. Then Vanderbilt on December 29th of 2022 was ranked number 143 in the net. Okay. Then what in the world? Yeah. Then they played Southeastern Louisiana, who's a Q4 team, and they beat Southeastern Louisiana 93-55. Vanderbilt beat them. And Vanderbilt jumped from number 143 to number 119. And that was the largest jump up in one game that they have had all year on a blowout victory against a Q4 team. And then this is the kicker. And this is what we've been referencing is on January 30th, 2023, this Vanderbilt team was ranked 93rd in the net. Then they lost to Alabama by 57 points, and they moved to number 107. They moved 14 spots in one loss due to that margin of victory and being at home. And I know that it says on the NCAA net calculations that scoring margin is capped at 10 points, but something's going on with that Vanderbilt's largest movements, both up and down, have been around 40-point wins or losses to Q1 on the loss and Q4 on the win, and both resulted in the largest bumps up or down for this team all season. That doesn't make any sense. That is illogical. And if anybody can look at Vanderbilt as a test case, the NCAA net has a core problem, and it is due to margin of victory. I don't know what it is. I can't see inside the calculation that they have, but there's something wrong with the team value index calculation, the offensive or defensive efficiency. Something is too heavily weighted on these blowout victories and losses, and it's just rewarding teams for getting beat by 6 to 10 points over and over, like Ohio State, who are now ranked solidly at number 63, even though they've done absolutely nothing all year as far as actual wins are concerned.
And here's another thing, that if the NCAA and the selection committee continues to uplift the net and say this is going to be the analytic standard that the selection committee is going to use most often and weight most heavily, then as a basketball program, why would Vanderbilt ever schedule VCU again? Why would somebody like Duke, why would we have these SEC Big Ten showdowns? Why would we have like ACC Big East showdowns? There's no incentive to doing so. There's no incentive for you to go out and to play a team that is going to maybe boost your BPI or boost your strength of schedule. It doesn't help you at all. If anything, it hurts you, because if Vanderbilt goes out and, let's say, I don't freaking know, they play, I'm trying to think of a good out of conference.
They had a really good example this year, maybe, of what you're talking about, which is in the Q4 teams. Is Grambling State is number 178 in the net, and Alabama A&M is number 321, and they're both Q4.
Yeah,
and those are
that's
like
a huge discrepancy.
Yeah, that's the difference in a team that won their conference's regular season in Grambling State,
a team that might make the tournament.
Exactly, and one of the 30 worst programs in the entire country, yet they are both classified as Q4.
Yeah.
That is idiotic. The person that designed the system to have Q4 to be home opponents number 161 to number 363, those opponents are not comparable. If you played a 7-game series between opponents 160 to 200 and opponents 320 to 360, the opponents 160 to 200 would win those 95% of the time because they are vastly superior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing,
the whole thing is crazy.
Yeah, the other thing about it too is the NCAA with the net rankings are forcing coaches to, like you said, Trevor, change the way they schedule, change the way they analyze.
Why would a Duke ever want to play someone like a Cincinnati, or why should Bama keep scheduling games against Houston or Gonzaga?
Right.
It literally it doesn't help you at all if you follow the net.
And there are coaches out there that have figured out the net. I think most coaches have, at least by this point. I think Stackhouse has, but part of me thinks Stackhouse didn't even realize the net was being weighted as much as it was at the beginning, like the first half of the season, because he finally said, we need to win big over this Florida team to help our net rating. Like that's the first time he said that was within the last 3 weeks of the season. So I think there are probably some coaches that knew that going in and they coach differently. They analyze differently. You know, they all compile stats. They all have statistical, nerds on their staff. But, it just like some coaches have taken advantage of that and said, we're going to pummel this Southeastern Louisiana team. We're going to try to pummel an Ole Miss or, a Florida. So we will continue to talk about the net. It's probably not going to go away as much as we want it to go away. But again, I'll continue to harp on. They need some humans on that committee to help Vanderbilt out. So,
and I was going to say, just in closing for this question, I totally agree. If Vanderbilt wants to get in, the human element of the selection committee is going to have to use their brain and realize that this Vanderbilt team is hot. What matters most for teams going into tournament play is whoever's the hottest, and that Vanderbilt has a good strength, not just a good strength of schedule, for all intents and purposes, a great strength of schedule by whether you look at Walter Nolan or whoever you look at.
Sagarin. And
yeah, literally all of these are going to have Vandy top 20, top 15. You're going to have to hope that the committee just uses like common human sense and just realize that, okay, maybe they didn't beat St. Joseph Brothers of the Poor by 1,000, but lately they beat a really good Auburn team. They beat a good Kentucky team at Rupp, and they beat a top 5 team in Tennessee at your place. Like, I don't.
Yeah. And this isn't even for the sake of Vanderbilt. Like, this is for the sake of college basketball, the future of college basketball. Like,
you're going to have a lot of teams get screwed if this is the metric.
I like how you said that, Will. Vanderbilt is the poster child this year of how asinine the net is. We'll continue talking about the net. Let's get to Adam on Twitter. He says, what is Lee Dort's status? The end-all, be-all question. And Malik Dia played okay for the 2 minutes he was in. Can he be coached to play big during the tournament? I think we answered that last pod. Just thinking QMB can only do so much and will foul out against better teams. I think somebody asked this literally this question last pod. So let's just get to Dort's status, guys. I mean, again, we don't know, but we had some good insight, Trevor, on the spaces from his dad, Derrick Shelby.
About as best as you could get.
Yeah. I mean, insider access. I was about to say breaking news. Lee Dort is feeling great. His energy's high, because that's what Derrick said. I'm not going to, if I wish I recorded the spaces so people could go back and listen, but
he said, quote, he feels no pain.
Yes.
Now, obviously the staff, they have just because he doesn't feel pain doesn't mean there's not still a liability. Right. But Derrick Shelby said, quote, he feels no pain.
Yeah, that was it. So I think if you're asking that question, there it is. His status is he's good to go. He's fine, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to go out and play 15, 20 minutes. Like I think what Derrick said, maybe it's a 9 or 10 or 11 minute outing. And then against Kentucky, it gets increased a little bit. They're going to slowly introduce him back into the lineup. But Will, you said it, having Dort in there, just even if it's for 10 minutes, even if it's for a few minutes to spell QMB at times, even if it's to give take a little pressure off Malik Dia, because Dia had to go in there against Tolu Smith and fight. So I think it'll be huge to take a break from Dia, but also if Q gets in foul trouble and you've got to go right to Dia or even Studi at the 5 against Kentucky, that's bad news. So yeah. I guess let's get to that strategy, guys, against Sheboy. That's sort of what this question gets at. And we've got another question. How can Vanderbilt hold their own against Oscar in the rebounding category from Nate? And he adds, Lee Dort will help, but won't solve the issue. So what does Vanderbilt do? Where do they go, Will, against Sheboy? The end-all, be-all question, because Sheboy got his last time they played at 20 and 20, 21 and 20, but Vanderbilt still won. So I guess, can Vanderbilt still win with Sheboy getting his again?
Well, number one, don't look past the first game of the SEC tournament versus either LSU or Georgia, because this team has shown that they are capable of having incapable.
Remember what happened last time?
Exactly.
We looked past a game.
Yeah, exactly. So this is me.
So that's the bigger issue here. Will.
Yeah. Number one, win that game, because that is not going to be an easy or guaranteed task. But if that's a given,
right,
there's nothing you can do to compete against Sheboy. You have to hope you can get him in foul trouble early, because how you defend against Oscar Sheboy and stop him from dominating inside is Liam Robbins is healthy, is how you stop that from happening. You're not going to coach up Lee Dort to stop Oscar Sheboy, who's a senior. QMB is not as good as Oscar Sheboy. No offense to QMB. We love QMB on this podcast. But there's not like an answer to stopping Sheboy. Yeah. It's more like, how can you limit Oscar Sheboy? And I think attacking him early, just trying, I know it's Kentucky and I know it's very unlikely, but just trying to get him in foul trouble. That's your best bet. Get him one or two early. And then even if he's not in horrendous foul trouble throughout the game, he has to play with a little bit more of a timid mindset as to not pick up that third foul early in the second half. And that could be enough of a difference to allow Vanderbilt to compete against. But, Lightning is going to be tough to strike twice. And getting Kentucky on another bad shooting night is going to be a very, I don't want to put anything past this team, but there's good defense and then there's bad shooting. And I think last time against Kentucky, it was a combo. I mean, it wasn't just that Kentucky shot bad. Vanderbilt played good defense, but Kentucky shot bad.
But they did shoot bad, yeah.
Exactly. But they did shoot bad. So that's another part is, yes.
Make
Vanderbilt
them shoot
beat
bad
them
again.
last time. Exactly. Like, all of this sounds really dumb coming out of my mouth. It's like, rebound the basketball good and make Kentucky not shoot good. And I'm like, there's my breakdown. But that's kind of where you're at. I mean,
that's basically what it is. Yeah.
No rational thoughts, just vibes.
Yeah, no rationality, just vibes. And Vanderbilt's roster is less talented than Kentucky's. Like, it just is. But this team's roster without Liam Robbins is probably
make them
less
play bad.
It's probably
rebound.
It's probably worse than Mississippi State's roster too, and they dominated that game and controlled that game.
That's the thing, guys.
I won't put anything past this team, good or bad, at this point.
That last part you said, Will, we've been saying that a lot. Like, man, Kentucky's just more talented. Like they're the more talented team, but every time Vanderbilt somehow figures a way to beat the team. I mean, Tolu had 27 points and 11 rebounds. Like, he dominated that game. How Vanderbilt won, I don't know. I guess you can say 3-point shooting, but I don't know, Trevor. They find a way. They're gritty, like Ezra said.
I mean, you just can't put it past them. I mean, they're just I can't stop giggling.
It's unexplainable.
I'm trying to have a serious moment here, but just Billy going, make them play bad. It's like living rent free in my head right now. And I can't have a coherent thought I could before. But
I'm not saying I have $10 on Vanderbilt to win the SEC championship. But I do have $10 on Vanderbilt to win the SEC
championship. I'm really glad it's only $10.
$480 payout. So
there you go. Guys, speaking of Vandy in the SEC tournament, Mark McNulty, our guy Mark, says, guys, we got to figure out where we need to pregame Thursday night. He's got a good point. I'll be there. I know, Trevor, you got your tickets. It's a late tip. You'll be off work. What's the deal?
It's month end close right now, but I'm going to try my best. Me and Jacob Scholl have discussed getting tickets. So it's all contingent on me not having to look at Excel spreadsheets but I should be ready to rock.
They got Wi-Fi at Bridgestone, baby.
I need my screen set up. If you saw my office set up, I look like an insane man.
You're going to be looking at SEC tournament brackets on Excel instead of Excel, like your work on Excel. But
dude, yeah, I feel like not let myself look at anything related to brackets when I'm supposed to be working, because I'll just not work. I'll just not do my job.
It's March, baby. It's March. Yeah. But Mark, we'll figure out a place somewhere down there. And I know Auburn and Arkansas play right before Vanderbilt. If you have a ticket to Vandy, you get into that game as well. But
yeah,
I mean,
I'll say this. I'll say this too. I have seen some people ask for tickets specifically, and we said this on the space. You can get tickets to it's the 6 o'clock session for like
$25. Yeah.
Yeah, $15-$20. Now they are in section 303, 304, 305. With Vanderbilt having the late game, you can buy those cheap tickets and do the tradition of what every SEC fan base has ever done who has had the late game, is you just go on down to the baseline because there's going to be plenty of seats available,
especially Thursday. Yeah.
Yes, we will find each other Thursday before the game and during the game. That is, you can bet your bottom dollar.
Mark,
you'll see us. You'll see us.
You will see us.
You'll be able to find us. I promise.
You'll see Trevor.
Billy will be punching old men like he did at the Mississippi State game.
I accidentally slapped the guy in front of us upside the head, trying to as I stood up, and I felt
it was
so
awesome.
Bad.
It was awesome.
He gave me the evil eye. I felt awful. But no, will be wearing his gold AJ Ogilvy jersey. You'll see him, and Trevor will be wearing his old Vanderbilt jacket, the black jacket. You'll see.
I might not wear anything, boys. So just buckle up. Don't bring your girl to Bridgestone because I'll be there.
All right, guys. But I know we're waiting on Trevor's hype speech. We got a bunch of people ready for the hype speech, but Bridgestone, get to Bridgestone, guys. Just get to Bridgestone. There's no excuse not to show up.
Spend the $25 to go to an SEC tournament. You literally get to spend $20 to see like 2 tournament basketball games. Like, come on, like what are we doing?
It's for the whole session.
I mean, good Lord, like I don't.
Vandy
me go on my knees and beg for you. Like, come on. I know you guys have $25.
And Vandy will most likely start somewhere between 8:30 and 9. So if they win, they'll face Kentucky Friday night. Will, before we get to Trevor, what is your message to the common Vanderbilt fan debating, should I head down to Bridgestone for Thursday and Friday night? Should I make that trip? It's such a long trip. That 30-minute drive is so long. And there's that flat screen staring at me in my living room. Convince a Vandy fan to get to the Stone.
I just don't want to give a hype speech because I know it's not going to be as good as Trevor's. I actually had something kind of thought out planned, but there's just no point. Let's just give the people.
Bro, let it rip. Let it rip.
No, Trevor. I think we'll shift over to you. I think we'll give the people what they want. They didn't ask for a Will Byrum hype speech. They asked for a Hacksquat.
For a Will Byrum one. I need it.
Here we go.
8 out of the last 9. 8 out of the last 9. Every single Vanderbilt fan, every single common Vanderbilt fan, including me, including Billy, including Trevor, all of us said that to get our asses in the seats, what did this team need to do, Billy? Win. What have they done? They've won. They've won. They deserve. I rarely use that word because rarely do Vanderbilt teams deserve. This team deserves the fan base's support inside of Bridgestone. They have turned around this season and turned this flaming pile of garbage and wreckage that this entire season was on and turned it around to actually give us meaningful basketball for the first time in years in March. And you're not going to make the trip down to watch meaningful tournament basketball for the first time since 2017? Come on. Now, Trevor, I need the real hype speech from you. That was the logical hype speech. I need the real hype speech.
Here's the thing, guys. I gave a hype speech right before Auburn. I did not own a mic at that point. I was just using my AirPods and the little microphone that is somehow inside of my AirPods. My voice and my speaker or my microphone could not pick up the hype, and it was just silent. And on camera, I'm just gesticulating like an insane person. After that, I decided I need a microphone so that you guys can never not hear a hype speech ever again. I went to the Best Buy in Rivergate at 2:30 on, I think it was President's Day. I was off work. It was a federal holiday. I hop out of my car. Somebody in the Best Buy parking lot of Rivergate wants to fight me. I could have ducked my tail and I could have went home without a microphone. But I stood there ready to fight this man in the Rivergate Best Buy parking lot because I knew that I needed a microphone so that the masses, the unwashed masses, that not just you all are, but I am, of which I am the foremost unwashed, could deliver the goods for all of us absolutely insane people. This guy called me all sorts of slurs in which I will not repeat on here. But then he hopped out of his Ford F-150, and I realized that he was a 5'5" man and maybe weighed 150 pounds soaking wet. And in that moment, I've never felt so confident in my life as to that I could beat up another grown man. I did not. I just went into Best Buy and I purchased my microphone for you guys. With that being said, I have gone to great lengths to purchase this microphone. You can go to lesser lengths to get to Bridgestone on Thursday night. This microphone cost me a lot of money, over $100. To some of you, that's not a lot of money. I could buy 4 basketball tickets for the price of this single microphone. There is no excuse for you not to be at Bridgestone on Thursday night. I'm on Twitter and I tweeted, shout out to Miller McKee. He is the leader of the Boomers in Section L. He is the only person under the age of 75 that sits in Section L, and he brings the noise. We need a bunch of people to bring the noise in Bridgestone on Thursday night. On Twitter, we have people calling it the Brawl on Broadway. We have Melee on Sobro. We have all sorts of other names. Bloodshed at the Barn. Some of these, I'm actually not even reading my Twitter. They just sounded familiar, so I'm just going off rip. But Thursday night,
in Smashville.
Showtime in Smashville. Hell in the Hockey Barn.
Hellscape at the Hall of Fame.
Oh my God, give it to me!
Bombs over bachelorettes.
Here's the thing. I've got violent intentions for Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be at Bridgestone. My dad is going to be at Bridgestone. I need all of you to be at Bridgestone. This team deserves it. They fought like hell all year long. And all year long, we have moaned and whined about Vandy basketball sucks. Where's Memorial Magic? Where? Well, it's back. It was back against Tennessee. It was back against Auburn. It was back against Florida. It was back against Mississippi State, Kentucky. It's back. You have no excuse not to be there Thursday night. And you know what? We got practice squad guys out there. Liam Robbins is out, but you know what? I'm ready to roll if they need me. I played 2 years varsity. I'm in the best shape of my life. Let's go, Dores! D-A-N-D. Why? Vandy. Oh, hell yeah!
There it is.
Get the Bridgestone on Thursday. I'm not going to say it again.
That's what they wanted. That is what the people wanted.
That was insane, and I loved it.
The
Everything about that was
I'm insane.
The build-up was the best part. I mean, that was a chapter book right there from Trevor Hulan. Get to Bridgestone Arena. There's no excuse. You heard Trevor. Vandy will play the winner of Georgia or LSU, and then they might just face Kentucky on Friday night. You've been listening to the Dore Report. For Will Byrum, Trevor Hulan, I'm Billy Derrick. We will see you all at Bridgestone Arena Thursday night. Good night, Commodores.
Bloodshed on Broadway, baby. Let's get it.